Hi, what is cognitive behavior therapy and how is it going to help you? Cognitive behavior therapy, otherwise known as CBT for short, is a form of a therapy designed to fix problems. It's not like your regular psychotherapy or counseling that tries to go deep into your deepest inner core being and fix who you are, life journey. It's not really there. It's about focusing on very specific things and fixing them. I personally think CBT is very, very useful. Cognitive behavior therapy is the number one in the world for dealing with things like phobias and obsessive compulsive behavior and all this are used. So if you're being stressed out by anxieties, fears, stresses, phobias, compulsive behavior, take a look at CBT and see what it can do for you. Okay, so I'm just going to go and bounce around a couple of articles here to give you an overview. And probably after this video, I'll do a couple more. We're going to have a look at what it is and give you some taste for how to go about doing it with yourself. Basically, how about doing the cognitive behavior therapy? So let's take a look. Okay, so first of all, what is cognitive behavior therapy? Okay, so it's a psychosocial intervention, behavior, feelings, and thoughts. You take a look at this Wikipedia page, it's pretty huge and it was developed over the 20th century, okay, by various famous people, okay, like this guy here, John B. Watson, etc. And I suppose the way it really came about was initially in the early part of the 20th century, psychotherapy was developed. And psychotherapy tended to be somewhat slow because it's the talking therapy. And the whole idea of psychotherapy, I suppose, is that we are in language and we're structured by language, and that the words we say have a powerful effect upon us. And that as we talk about our problems and issues, things will come to light. Things which we're repressing, which we're not dealing with, will come to light. But the problem is it takes an awful long time to get there. And what the cognitive behavior therapist guys came to realize was that, what if I just want to fix something? So the analogy I would give is, if you have a puncture in your tire, do you want to change the whole tire, or do you want to fix the puncture? So cognitive behavior therapy is about fixing things. Now, I'm a strong believer in life as a journey and fixing things in the long term. But at the same token, it's good to go and have tactics and techniques can help us in the short term deal with things as well, okay? So if we take a look here in our NHS.uk, it's National Health Service UK, overview of CBT, it says here that CBT is based on the concept that your thoughts, your feelings, your physical sensations, and actions are interconnected, and that negative thoughts and feelings can trap into vicious cycles. So just think of it as a loop, okay? So say, for example, you are a smoker and you give no smoking, okay? And the first thing you do every thing in the morning is you grab a cig, okay? So you've got this thing in your hand. You're used to having a cigarette in your hand. And when you go in work and you go for little breaks and stuff, you used to chat to people with the cigarette in your hand. So it's a kinesthetic thing as well. If, say, for example, you're eating too much, say, chocolates and sweets, you're used to having a chocolate bar at the end of every meal, you're gagging for a chocolate bar. It's not just a thought of the chocolate, but it's the actual sensation of, I have this little treat and I eat my little bar, okay? Because as small kids, we learn to have treats when we do good. And that's one of the problems with addiction to things like sweets and chocolates. We need to go and replace that with some other thing that will feel good. So, for example, you could have, maybe instead of eating a chocolate, a chocolate bar, you could have one piece of chocolate, or instead of maybe having chocolate at all, you might have something like a date, for example. Dates are very sweet. You can get your hands on them. So it says here, like other treatments, CBT deals with your current problems, okay, rather than focusing on issues from the past. So it's really that we're stuck in behavior, okay? Now, a lot of what I talk about on this channel is things like how your childhood and traumas affect you and so on, and how we have to learn about ourselves. But also, we are a biological organism, or certainly our mind is inside a biological construct. And our biology has an effect upon us. And, you can argue that, but if I hit you with a hammer in the head, it's going to affect how you think. It's a simple fact, isn't it? If you bruise your toe and your toe is throbbing, and you come to class and your toe is throbbing, you're going to be finding it hard to concentrate. So our physical bodies are real. Philosophers have argued this for years. Oh, does my body exist or not? Well, just punch somebody in the face and see how they feel afterwards. So philosophy goes out the window when you get a physical problem. And the problem is our whole system is wired. I mean, people are basically addictive in nature. Okay, our bodies are addicted to all sorts of stimuli. And this is a problem that we have. And some is necessary. For example, this thing of overeating, so much obesity. But biologically, we're designed to just store food because there's always a lack of food in the winter months. But of course, today there's not a lack of food anytime. So we just get fatter and fatter and fatter. That's a problem we had. But our biology is telling us to go and store food. So, you know, we are very addictive in nature, right? If you look at the addiction that people have with phones these days, this sort of, checking updates. I keep getting a little, dopamine blast on my brain every time I check something. Whoa, I got an update. Okay, so we are addictive and our biology is addictive. So it looks for practical ways to improve your state of mind on a daily basis. What kind of things are good for them? Bipolar disorder, which is depression. Borderline personality disorder, eating disorders, of course, okay, because they tend to get triggered, okay? And also we tend to get pressurized and stressed. When we get stressed, we zoom off to a negative behavior. Panic disorder, phobias, PTSD, or post-traumatic stress disorder. Psychosis and schizophrenia, I don't think we're very effective, to be honest with you. Sleep problems, maybe, but definitely these ones I think would be big. Things like bipolar disorder, because bipolar disorder, if you look at depression, it tends to get kicked off. Oh no, here it comes again. Okay. And then we immediately go into a state of despair. If I can feel it coming and I can divert it, then maybe I won't get hit so bad. Or if I start getting hit, I have coping tactics for when I get hit by the depression. Anorexia, bulimia, any kind of eating disorder is going to help. Okay. Because it helps you have some kind of coping mechanism. And OCD, of course, is being very compulsive, okay? So there's many, many things that they can do. So just to give you an example of how I think it works pretty well, okay? I'll give you an example here. I think this is very well worth looking at. PositivePsychology.com's got some very nice articles here. And this is under PositivePsychology.com, CBT, cognitive therapy techniques, worksheets. Check it out. There's so much here. And I'll probably pop onto another day as well, okay? So it gives you a big overview of what it is and how you can work at it. But let's go straight through the juicy stuff rather than spending a long time looking at it. Let's just have a look at some of the, yes, here we go. So for example, cognitive distortions. This is really good, right? Okay, let's take a look here. Martin, 2016. The simple idea is that our unique patterns of thinking, feeling, and behaving are significant factors in our experiences, both good and bad. Since these patterns have such a significant impact on our experiences, it follows that altering these patterns can alter experience. Okay, so how CBT can change your thoughts, okay. Psychiatrist Aaron Beck was the first to produce cognitive behavior therapy. Like most mental health professionals at the time, Beck was a psychoanalysis practitioner, okay. So he noticed that a lot of people, they weren't lucky. They were using the same language all the time, okay? Emotional filled thoughts, all right? So they were triggering themselves, basically, all right? Beck found a combination of cognitive therapy and behavioral techniques produced the best results for his clients. In describing and honing this new therapy, Beck laid the foundation for the most popular and influential form of therapy the last 50 years, okay? So here you go. So it's a hands-on approach, and you can use it as well. So let's have a look at his cognitive distortions. I think that's a good place to look today. And then I'll probably make some follow-up videos about other aspects of cognitive behavior therapy, because it's very big. And check out this very big article, lots of nice free links on PositivePsychology.com. So he says here, here's a lot of stuff that people do wrong. He says they filter things, focusing on the negative, ignoring the positive, catastrophizing, expecting the worst case scenarios and minimizing the positive, polarized thinking, all or nothing thinking, okay? Heaven's reward fallacy, expecting self-sacrifice to reward. Control fallacies, assumes only others to blame, only self to blame, okay? Always being right. Being wrong is unacceptable, okay? So let's take a look at, let's give a few examples here, filtering. Focus on negative. So for example, you're going out for a day and on the way out to some trip somewhere, there's a puncture in the tire and you're delayed by an hour and you spend the whole day, even though you go to a beautiful place, you go to like maybe a seaside and you have all sorts of fun experiences. We keep thinking about that 1 hour, okay, when you had a puncture or you had a little fight with somebody, okay? And people do this all the time. Say, for example, couples, you have a fight with your girlfriend, your boyfriend, your husband, your wife, and you spend the whole day, even though lots of other things are going on, lots of maybe beautiful experiences are going on, but you keep remembering that painful moment where you said something painful or they said something painful and you're carrying around with you all day. You're focusing on the negative. Catastrophing, expecting the worst case scenario. Okay. Oh, it's never going to happen to me. I can't be a success. I can't get a nice girlfriend or boyfriend. I can't get a good job. Oh, I bet I'm going to go and fail that exam. Oh, I bet things aren't going to work out for me. Polarized thinking, all or nothing thinking. Either I'm going to put all my money into this cryptocurrency and either I'm going to become a billionaire or I'm going to lose $100,000. I wouldn't recommend that. Heaven reward fallacy, all the sacrifice for everybody, regardless whether they want me to help them or not. I'm going to help them anyway, and they better reward me for it. Okay. Control fallacies. I never had any problem. They're doing everything wrong to me, or it's all my fault. Okay. Always being right is I wasn't quite perfect. Okay. So back when I was a kid, fifth grade, there was a guy in my class for the previous 3 years. He'd always get 100% of maths in his exam. And that year he got 99% and he cried for about half an hour. Okay. So that's like too much perfectionism. Okay. Fallacy of fairness assumes life should be fair. Getting upset that's not. Jumping to conclusions, making assumptions based on little evidence. Okay. Emotional reasoning. I feel it must be true. So having no sense of what the hell you're doing. Blaming others. Fallacy of change, expects others to change. Global labeling, extreme generalizations of others. Shoulds, people should do this, people should do that. So there's an example of cognitive distortions, okay? Now, one exercise I could give you, which would be very useful, you can try on this, okay, is to take each of these and find an example of take the ones that you think you're doing. Find an example of each one and write out the thoughts that you had and then rewrite it the right way around, okay? So, for example, let's say you're blaming yourself, okay, on stuff all the time, all right? So this would be personalization, okay? So let's say, for example, you're a young child and some parent or family member died and you blame yourself. And let's say all through your life, it's always, that relationship didn't work out, it was my fault. That job didn't work out, it was my fault. My dad got sick, it was my fault. When we never have money, it's my fault. Like blaming yourself for everything. So what you do next time is you have something like, for example, our holiday didn't go to plan, it was all my fault. And you rewrite it and say something like, I accept that I feel that the holiday didn't go to plan. And I accept that that thought that I have is not rational. That the holiday didn't work out is something which happened for a variety of reasons. So you rewrite things like that in different ways, okay? Let's say, for example, catastrophe, okay, expecting the worst case scenario. I'll never be able to go and get the job I want. You rewrite that as, I think that I won't be able to get the job I want, but I will be able to get the job I want, okay? It's like catastrophe, for example. I won't be able to get the job I want. You're going to rewrite that as, I will be able to get the job I want. Let's say, for example, relationships. I know that this relationship isn't going to work out because my relationships never work out. And then you're going to rewrite it as, this relationship is working out. I'm becoming far more successful relationships. And this time it's working out. So what you do is you take that thing, which is faulty thinking, and you rewrite it in a different way. You rewrite the thinking. And then what you do is you try and check yourself when you're thinking these things, okay? So that's a very useful exercise. It goes down here, there's loads more on this. I'm going to pick out a few examples here we have. This is a worksheet attached to this. This one is coping styles. So let's see where that ties in here. Yeah, I think it was actually down here. Oh my God. I have to go back up and come back down. 1 second. Okay, we have 9 essential techniques and tools. Yeah, so. Okay, journaling. I'm a big fan of journaling. Okay. Okay. Let's take a look here. CBT journal, okay. Gratitude is one of the most desirable traits and qualities, because when we have gratitude, it strengthens us, okay? And we talk about gratitude journal, and it goes into a long explanation about how you could do it. Basically, how you do gratitude journaling is you find a positive event that day, no matter what's happening, and you try and find something to be positive, okay? I would also add just normal journaling, as in things you know, different aspects of journaling that will just talk about your journey, good or bad. Unraveling cognitive distortions, okay. Okay, let's take a look at the worksheets. We got here, for example, a coping styles worksheet. Okay, so instructs you or your client, you're the client, your own client in this case, to list any current perceived problems or difficulties. You or your client will work backward to list risk factors, why you're most likely to experience these problems someone else, and triggers or events. Once you've defined the problems and understand where you're struggling with them, you then list coping strategies, okay? They're not solutions to your problem, but they're ways of dealing with the effects of the problem that can have a temporary impact. So we're really talking about stress and anxiety here. So let's take a look at this one. So it gives an explanation, and then we have here what made me feel at risk in the first place, what events triggered this situation, what is the problem, how do I cope with the problem, what are the pros and cons of my coping strategies, what else could I do? Okay, so that's a very simple example. Another popular technique is the ABC function analysis. This technique helps you or the client learn about yourself, specifically what leads you to certain behaviors. In the middle of worksheets, box labeled behaviors. In this box, you write down any potential problematic behaviors. On the left side, you write down the antecedents, in which you or the client can write down the factors that preceded a particular behavior. Okay. On the right, you have consequences. All right. And you write down what will be the consequences. Let's take a look at this. So what triggered it? What was the behavior? What was the consequence? Let's say you have anger management, for example. This can be very useful because there's something is triggering it. And I'm not saying you can stop yourself being an angry person, but maybe you can stop yourself doing something silly, like punching somebody in the face in a flight, that kind of stuff that gets you in trouble. Another one here, which is the case formulation worksheet. There are 4 P's in case formulation: predisposing factors, precipitating factors, perpetuating factors, protective factors. They help us understand what be leading a perceived problem to arise and what might prevent them from being tackled effectively. In this worksheet, the therapist, you're your own therapist this time, will work with the clients through the 4 steps. First, they identify the predisposing factors, which are those external or internal that can add to the likelihood of someone developing a perceived problem. The problem. Examples might include genetics, life events, or temperament. Together, they collaborate to identify precipitating factors, which provide insight into those precise factors. Let's take a quick look at this one. All right. So identify the problem, the solution there. Okay, so that's the problem. What was your early life experiences? What were your core beliefs you had at the time that created this? What conditional assumptions, rules, or attitudes today were you having? Okay. Maladaptive coping strategy positive. So let's take a look at that, for example. Let's say you have a problem. We get back to the anger management. Somebody has a problem with anger management, okay? And they're having problems with their relationships, they're having problems with their jobs. Sometimes maybe having problems with the police or neighbors. Early life experiences, you're bullied as a kid, you couldn't take it anymore, and you slapped the guy aside of the head. And ever since then, you're Mr. and Mrs. Anger person, okay? Core beliefs, people are out to get you, hit out first, as an example, okay? Conditional assumptions that, you know, life is tough and I just can't control myself. I don't know why. I just can't do it. Maladaptive coping strategies, beating people up. Positives, well, it's good to be assertive. Okay, problematic situation, I keep on fighting people. Automatic thoughts, I can't stand this, I'm not taking it. Okay, meaning of automatic thoughts, well, with the emotions and sensation. Well, the emotions is incredible anger and uncontrolled rage because I can't cope and I have to vent it somehow. Physical, my body is steaming. And the behavior course is getting violent with people. So a worksheet like that will help somebody with anger management, as an example, get some kind of handle on it, right? So it goes on and on and on down here. Positivepsychology.com, cognitive behavior therapy techniques worksheets. Okay, I hope they give you some insight into how that works. All right. So you can go and find a cognitive behavior therapist. They will know a lot more than I do. I'm not a cognitive behavior therapist, but it's one of those systems where it's not like you have to go off and spend 5 years training to know how to do some basics. The basics are trying to grab a handle of where did this come from? Where did this thinking come from? And is there a different way of thinking? Is this thinking constructive? Is there a different way of dealing with this thinking? Is there a different way of dealing with these thoughts and feelings? And maybe finding a better way of handling. So have a look into yourself. Cognitive behavior therapy. There's a lot of useful strategies and techniques. You can check that article out. And that's got a whole bunch of endless number of articles. There's probably 50 or 60 pages worth of material there interlinked. It's really quite fascinating. But it's more or less what I would see as a kind of a philosophy or a psychology, a philosophy of psychology, which is to think about approaches to dealing with issues today, right here, right now. How am I going to cope with my obsessiveness? How am I going to cope with my phobia? How am I going to get into airplane? For example, I got fear of airplanes. How am I not going to go and beat my neighbor up or beat my wife up or have road rage on somebody or have a panic attack and go running screaming down the street? It's about coping with daily issues, and maybe that's not the endless, the bigger picture course to be a successful and happy human being and to truly fulfill yourself. But these things are big things. If you've got a phobia, anger management issue, or you can't get out of the house, you got agoraphobia, you're always crying and weeping, whatever it is, it can really hold you back from getting anywhere towards actualizing yourself as a person. So these are basics, and just have a look at some of those techniques and worksheets and get used to this thing, because it's all part of self-reflecting, okay? Which I would call journaling. I would just list all this under journaling, because in one way or another, you're looking at yourself and you're gaining insights, okay? Because as a young person, somewhere along the way, you got wired a certain way. And some of that works for you and some of that doesn't. And it's really a simple thing. If it's not working for you, fix it. Like if you got a problem with your teeth, you go to the dentist. Nobody thinks twice going to the dentist, and boom, it's done, isn't it? But for some reason, when it comes to life problems like phobias, fears, anxiety, anger management, over emotionality, depression, etc., people don't do anything. Final thing in this comment there, for example, depression. I've knocked down quite a few videos on depression, quite a few articles on depression, and at some stage I hope to release a book on depression. But the thing that's held me back is that from the marketing point of view, if you look at the searches for depression, nobody wants it. So 5% of the world's population is suffering depression at any one stage, but practically nobody buys a book on depression. It's a very weird thing. So you've got everybody and anybody is buying all sorts of crap out there which don't help them, and it's a waste. And yet there's certain essential things which people need, but nobody wants to talk about, not interested. And they're not dealing with it. And this is the problem with a lot of psychosocial stuff, is that it is a problem and people are held back from where they'd like to be, but they don't want to deal with it because it's too painful to deal with, or they're scared or not sure what to do about it. So people are sadly running around the place, buying new cars, buying expensive jewelry, spending money on drugs and alcohol and all this stuff, and not dealing with the issues that are holding them back from being really happy. But there you go. So a lot of useful stuff in there, and a lot of it's self-help stuff. I mean, I know if you got a big problem, maybe you need a therapist, but a lot of the stuff is stuff that you could do, anybody could do, a little bit of self-reflection, and lead a happier and healthier and more prosperous life. Okay, hope you liked the video. If you do, please like and subscribe. I'll talk to you next time.